Counting 1, 2, 3, 4. Pleasure for me to introduce Dr. Mubarak Awad. I do this not merely as a member of the steering committee at the Center for Peacemaking, but also because Mubarak Awad has been my friend for some 30 years. And you have been given some information about him in the handout, but I'll review some of that and add a little bit. In 1948, Mubarak Awad experienced the death of his father in fighting between Arabs and Jews, and he became a refugee in his own land in the old city of Jerusalem. But instead of turning to violent retaliation, Awad, as a teenager, studied the nonviolence of Mahatma Gandhi at a Mennonite college in the United States. He earned a master's degree from St. Francis University in Indiana and then a PhD in psychology from the International Graduate School at St. Louis, Missouri. In the U.S., Awad was also exposed to the nonviolent leadership of Martin Luther King. Awad is a member of the Greek Orthodox Church. Upon returning to Palestine, he was co-founder with Jonathan Kutab of the Palestinian Center for the Study of Nonviolence in 1984 in Jerusalem. Awad contends that all traditions and religions can discover and embrace nonviolent approaches to social change, justice, and peace. He helped to start the Palestinian activist tradition of planting new olive trees to replace trees destroyed by Israeli bulldozers in expansion of Israeli occupation and in areas of proposed settlements. Those settlements, all of them, whether in East Jerusalem or the West Bank or the Golan Heights, all those settlements are illegal under international law. His other nonviolent strategies include boycott of Israeli goods, encouraging the use of Palestinian products, and the non-payment of taxes, as well as education for cross-cultural dialogue among youth and adults in Israel-Palestine. His advocacy of nonviolence over 3 decades has included his translation of key books on nonviolence in Arabic and Farsi. Awad, of course, gained opponents in both Israel and the PLO for promoting nonviolent resistance to the occupation in the first Palestinian Intifada in 1987. In 1988, he was deported from Israel, even though the Reagan White House advocated in his defense. That deportation was when Shamir was the Prime Minister of Israel. And I don't know if you know history enough to realize that Yitzhak Shamir, earlier in his career, was a leader in a Jewish terrorist organization called the Stern Gang. Among its accomplishments was the assassination of the UN mediator, the Swede Count Bernadotte. For the last 15 years, Awad has taught at the School for International Service at American University in Washington, D.C. But he wears many hats. In 1989, he created Nonviolence International to foster negotiations as an alternative to violence. Even as an undergraduate student, he was founder of National Youth Advocate Program, which works with gangs and youth in the United States. In fact, 2,000 kids a day are active in these programs. Based in Ohio, but now also organized in California, Illinois, Indiana, South Carolina, West Virginia, Georgia, with an annual budget of $50 to $60 million. Mubarak is married, has 2 children. His lovely wife, Nancy Nye, is a top person with ANERA, A-N-E-R-A, which is based in Washington, D.C., and that stands for America Near East Refugee Assistance. So, to repeat the arrangements for the evening, Mubarak is going to speak. This will be followed by a Q&A session. If you have a question for Mubarak, please write it on the blue form, and we will take it from there. Yes? Yes, just hold it up. I'll ask for them, hold them up at the beginning of the Q&A, and they'll be quickly gathered, and we will proceed from there. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Mubarak Awad.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. Also, I'm happy to see a lot of young people. And I think that it's amazing for the young people to hear what I'm going to say, because hopefully that you would have a sense that you will be able to think of yourself as a person interested in peace and what you could do. I am a Palestinian. I am an Arab, and many times when I say I'm a Palestinian, an Arab who believe in nonviolence, it's like people say, what do you mean by Palestinian Arab who believe in nonviolence? All Arabs are violent people, and we have to tell you that not all Arabs are violent people. I was born in Jerusalem, I studied in Jerusalem, and I am very much an activist and also a pacifist, which I don't believe in war. And I'll come to those conclusions how I was working and became interested in nonviolence. I'm a psychologist, and that's where I make my living and pay the rent. I don't pay it through nonviolence, because if you are working for peace, all your life will be poor. So you have to have another another profession to keep you going. As a psychologist, after I finished my degrees, I went back to Palestine with the hope that I'll start counseling centers in Palestine, and I did. I started the Palestinian Counseling Center, which have to do with putting counselors in school, working with children whose parents either being in jail or they don't know where they are at, or being killed by Israelis, or so that was an important for me. And it was very tough for me to work with that, because the numbers are so huge. And if you start looking at the numbers of Palestinians who are in jail or lost of parents, then you say, oh my, nearly you need a psychologist for every family there. But the Palestinians, they were not interested in psychology nor in counseling. And then I have to slowly try to make and do my way. Said, we are under occupation as Palestinians, and people are more interested in getting rid of occupation rather than counseling. So I completely switched. I put a different director to direct the counseling center, and I opened a center called the Palestinian Center for the Study of Nonviolence. And in that time, I was so much interested in knowing why the Palestinian, they don't use the methods like Gandhi in India. Gandhi liberated India not through a gun, but through the ideas and ways of a nonviolent struggle. And we can do that, I felt that, as Palestinians. But to do that, you have to do a study. So I start working on a study about Islam and nonviolence, about Arabs and nonviolence, and about Palestinian and nonviolence. And I find out that Arabs, Palestinians, and Muslims, they all have a very rich concept of nonviolence. However, it's not written. Palestinians and Arabs, they don't write what they do. Even we were looking at Algeria, we were looking at Morocco, we were looking at Egypt. I'll give you an example. In Egypt, they got rid of the monarchy, King Farouk, without any single bullet. And they said that we have to have him out of the country. They got his family and they put him in a boat and say goodbye, and Egypt, we got the king out. Not a single violence, but you don't hear about it in books, about a non-violent struggle to get rid of the monarchy. So the Palestinians and the Arabs, and I start wondering, okay, where are the Arabs getting their weapons? And why a lot of people say that Arabs are violent? And guess where we get our weapons? From whom? From United States, from Europe. And the United States and Europe say those Arabs are violent people, but you give us the weapons. You know that Arabs never invented any weapons? Even the sword and the dragon, we have that from India and China. And why in the heck you say Arabs are violent? Then with the Palestinians, you know what Arab were very good in? We have created cushion, people to sit on, so that your butt would be okay. We have kuhul for women to be prettier. We have glass so people could drink from. So when we invent things, it was a pleasurable thing rather than war things. And I start writing that and start telling the Arabs and the Palestinians, look, fellows, we are not violent. Why even some of us think that we are violent because someone else said that we are violent? It's like if you live in Chicago, everybody in Chicago is a gangster, okay? And people start believing they are gangster and they do gangster things. That doesn't mean that Arabs, they are not like any other human beings. They still have some of the problems and some of social problems. We do.